Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol sentenced to life in prison for insurrection. Seoul, South Korea. Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol was sentenced to life imprisonment on February 19, 2026, after a Seoul court found him guilty of leading an insurrection through his failed attempt to impose martial law in December 2024. The ruling by the Seoul Central District Court marks the most severe punishment ever handed down to a democratically elected head of state in South Korea's modern history. Prosecutors had sought the death penalty, but the judges opted for life imprisonment with hard labor, concluding that while Yoon's effort to paralyze the legislature and deploy troops was grave, it did not involve widespread bloodshed, a failed martial law gamble. On December 3, 2024, Yoon declared martial law in a late-night broadcast, claiming rising anti-state forces and alleging election fraud by opposition lawmakers. His intent, the court concluded, was to block the National Assembly, arrest key political figures, and consolidate power. Troops and police were mobilized toward the legislature, triggering national protests and shock domestically and internationally. The declaration lasted only about 6 hours as lawmakers and citizens pushed back, blocking the military, passing votes to overturn the decree, and ultimately blocking Yoon's power grab. Parliament impeached him within 11 days, and the Constitutional Court removed him from office in April 2025. Court verdict and reaction. During Thursday's sentencing, the judge emphasized that deploying military force to encircle and disrupt the National Assembly constituted an insurrection and a threat to the constitutional order. Although prosecutors argued that Yoon's actions sought to overthrow democratic institutions, judges determined that life in prison, rather than execution, was justified given the failed execution and limited use of lethal force. Outside the courthouse, reactions were starkly divided. Pro-Yoon supporters chanted slogans and decried the proceedings as politically motivated, while critics celebrated the verdict as a decisive reaffirmation of the rule of law. The sentencing was broadcast live across South Korea and watched by millions. Co-defendants and ongoing legal battles. Several of Yoon's aides were also sentenced. Former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun received a 30-year prison term. Other senior military and police officials received sentences ranging from 3 to 18 years. Some associates were acquitted. Yoon's legal team denounced the decision as a show trial and vowed to appeal the conviction, arguing that his actions were constitutional and aimed at safeguarding democracy. The former president also faces additional criminal cases, including charges of treason and abuse of power, which could result in further punishments if upheld by higher courts. Historical and political impact. This judgment comes after months of non-stop legal proceedings and political turmoil that saw South Korea grapple with its democratic institutions. Yoon's martial law attempt was the first such declaration since the era of military government in the late 20th century, and its failure is widely seen as a test of South Korea's democratic resilience. Under Korean law, life imprisonment or death are the only sentences available for insurrection. However, South Korea hasn't executed anyone since 1997, and a moratorium on capital punishment makes life imprisonment the practical maximum sentence.